Becoming a father at a young age was never part of my plan, but life has a funny way of throwing unexpected curveballs at you. The mother of my daughter and I were never on the same page, and soon after our little one was born, she left us both. I didn't blame her. I was reckless in my youth, and my temper and addictions only made things worse. As if that weren't enough, our daughter was born with a mild degree of cognitive and motor disability. As the sole provider for my family, I knew that I had to step up and be the father that my daughter needed, no matter how difficult it might be. I made the difficult decision to place my daughter in an orphanage. However, I persevered in overcoming my addictions and eventually found myself on a new path. Through hard work, I was promoted to a supervisor role overseeing multiple shoe stores, and things started to improve. As soon as I could, I brought my daughter back home from the orphanage. Sarah was 13 when I finally managed to bring her back. From the first night she arrived, everything in the house changed. As I turned off the lights in my room on the first night, preparing to sleep, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps echoing down the hallway. Later that night, when I got up to use the bathroom, I overheard Sarah engaged in what sounded like a full conversation. Upon entering her room, I saw her sitting on the bed, gazing intently towards a dark corner of the room. When I inquired as to whom she was speaking, she did not respond. Instead, she laid down and wrapped herself in the blankets. On other occasions, when I was lying in my bed, I saw her walk down the hallway while dragging a thick old rope. I heard her footsteps accompanied by heavy thuds that made the wooden floorboards rattle. I popped up and stormed to the hallway to see what was happening, but I only saw my daughter entering her room with the rope in her hand. I attributed this strange behavior to her disability. One night I came home exhausted. It was already very late, and I went to my daughter's room to give her a kiss on the forehead. She was sleeping deeply with the rope in her hand. I tried to take it away from her, but I couldn't. She was gripping it tightly. Giving up on my attempt, I went to sleep and fell into a deep slumber. It was 4 a.m. when I woke up, extremely thirsty. As I was heading to the kitchen, I saw my daughter covered in blood, standing at the end of the hallway. My heart raced seeing her there in the darkness. I ran to her, and she told me that some wicked men had broken into the house, but her pet had taken care of them. It was hard to understand her due to my state of shock and her language difficulties. She took my hands and led me to the living room. There I found the bodies of 3 men, or what was left of them. I asked her if she had done that, and she replied no. She told me it was the pet. She said he is very gentle and friendly, but doesn't like strangers. Filled with confusion, I asked her what pet she was talking about, as we didn't have any animals at home. She took me to her bedroom, and there was the rope tied to a bed's leg, but there was no one there. Only darkness. I thought the pet was her imaginary friend. At that moment, she closed her closet door, and in the mirror, I could see the enormous face of that infernal creature. It turned out that her pet was a horrendous demon she had brought with her from the orphanage. From this moment, my entire life has gone to hell. My girlfriend and I have been dating for half a year, and each time I invited her for a sleepover, she would consistently provide reasons not to. She explained that she sleep talks and occasionally utters unpleasant things while being asleep. One evening, I successfully persuaded her to stay overnight, while she gently reminded me about her problem. It seemed that after staying at her ex-boyfriend's places, none of them ever reached out again, choosing to end the relationship via text and vanish from her life instead of facing her directly. Upon hearing this, I found their behavior immature, childish, and laughed at the notion of ending a relationship through a mere text message. That night, I was thrilled, as our relationship had been wonderful, and she appeared to be the girl I had always dreamed of. Before we went to bed, she asked me once more to pledge that regardless of what I heard, I wouldn't fade from her life. Additionally, she asked me not to wake her up under any circumstances, as doing so would leave her feeling unwell and disoriented. Instead, I should simply ignore whatever I heard and not respond to it. I assured her that I would comply, that I wouldn't disturb her sleep, and that I wouldn't react to anything I heard. Honestly, I believed she was overstating the issue. After sharing a passionate, intimate experience, she requested that I leave her alone in bed and retire to the couch in the living room. I obliged so as not to upset her, hoping to make her feel at ease and set the stage for many more shared nights. Eventually, hours passed, and I succumbed to a deep slumber. I'm unsure how much time elapsed before I was suddenly roused by the sensation of being watched. At that moment, I remembered that Laura, my girlfriend, was with me, and I smiled when suddenly I saw Laura's silhouette sitting on the bed, gazing intently at me. I couldn't help but feel a sudden chill of terror as her posture seemed unnerving. Half asleep, I wondered if it could be someone else when I heard her begin to speak. The voice that came out was not Laura's. Instead, it was a warped, spine-chilling sound. It was a distorted, eerie voice, as if she was possessed. "I'm going to skin you alive and eat your flesh," she uttered, paralyzing me with fear as I looked at Laura. She arched her back and scuttled out of the room like a grotesque spider. As I tried to make sense of the horrifying event, I found the room empty. Hoping it had been a figment of my imagination, I attempted to return to sleep. An indeterminate amount of time passed before an unbearable stench reached my nostrils. As I opened my eyes, there was Laura, her face pressed against mine, staring intensely with dilated pupils. She warned me that if I didn't leave by morning, I would meet my demise and she would skin me alive. Trembling and sobbing, I knew that the entity before me was not my girlfriend. She stood up, turned around, and retreated to her bed, leaving me petrified in the darkness. I got up and ran out without looking back. That night I stayed at my parents' house. The following morning, I received a message from Laura, inquiring about my whereabouts, questioning why I had abandoned her, and asking why I hadn't bid her farewell. I responded vaguely, explaining that numerous events happened the night before, and that I needed time to comprehend what had occurred. We never sought each other out again, and 3 years have passed since that dreadful night. The haunting memory lingers, and to this day I remain fearful of sleeping with someone for an entire night. I had ventured far out to sea. According to the warnings, it was very dangerous, but there was no competition from other fishermen, so it was worth the risk. Besides, nothing had ever happened to me in the 100 or so times I had gone before. One more time won't hurt, I thought, and I continued with my work as usual. Lost in my thoughts, I lost track of time and it became dark. A serious mistake, as I had never been caught at night mist so far from shore. Getting disoriented was too easy, and I knew that if I got lost, no one would come to rescue me. Trying to return, I was captivated by an angelic singing. I covered my ears with my hands, so I wouldn't have to hear those enchanting sounds. I had heard stories like this from other fishermen, although I never fully believed them. It was the mermaids, bearers of evil and bad luck. Legend has it that these mermaids possess a hypnotic voice that can mesmerize and seduce sailors, causing them to jump overboard and drown. They are also believed to have a taste for human flesh, and have been known to drag sailors to the depths of the ocean to consume them. Old fishermen say that mermaids are cursed fallen creatures who have been banished to the ocean depths due to their evil deeds. They were the last thing I wanted to encounter at that moment. A thick fog covered the boat, and I had to stay still to not lose my bearings. Beside me, the sea turned a bloody crimson red. Their singing grew louder, and my nerves worked against me. All of a sudden, a beautiful young mermaid climbed over the railings. Armed with a small knife, I was willing to defend myself at all costs. However, everything was in vain from the moment I got lost in her gaze. Beautiful blue eyes that seduced my soul with her imposing presence. With her completely naked skin and her beautiful red hair, it was impossible to resist her charm as she approached slowly. The mermaid's tail had transformed into 2 human legs in front of me. She placed her hand on my chest as if to feel the beating of my heart, and with a smile that took my breath away, she kissed me passionately. I surrendered to her touch. So long had it been since I remembered the delicate touch of a woman that my senses gave in to her caresses. That night, she surrendered herself to me, and our bodies united in perfect harmony during the ecstasy and lust that were finally being drained from my being. She was like fire and burned intensely with the heat of her soul colliding with mine. We ended up exhausted, with her on top of my chest and me almost falling asleep as I felt the tranquility of her breath caressing me. It was magical. A strong pressure began to bother me, and I opened my eyes and looked at her body, which was becoming heavier. I tried to move her to the side, but I couldn't. She was swelling, becoming increasingly heavy, trapping me without the possibility of moving. Her tail returned to normal and her skin turned grayish, secreting a strange, transparent, and foul-smelling mucus. Her face split in half, opening from where her mouth was, and revealing a row of sharp teeth like saws. The wood of the boat broke, as the hands of other mermaids held each of my limbs with force and pressed down. I started to scream, and in less than a second, my arms were savagely ripped off from my body, followed by my legs, which were devoured by younger mermaids who enjoyed the feast. Finally, the mermaid on top of me shook and took a giant bite, tearing off the upper half of my torso, and thus, ending my life.